$100 million deal in self-storage. I caught up with the principals and I caught up with the new president of Extra Space. And what did Noah Springer say about the direction of the second largest storage REIT? Finally, you won't want to miss this week's How Faith Fuels Your Business. A young tech entrepreneur, incredible insight into syncing his belief in God with starting an AI company. This is the Self-Storage Report. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell, Director of Business Development and Strategic Branding at S3 Partners. 30 years and over 300 ground-up development projects. If you have a piece of raw dirt from entitlement all the way through construction and handing off the keys to management, we can help make your dream come alive. The big news in storage this week, the Kiwi II Construction Company acquired by Janus International in a $97.5 million move. Of course, I am very close to Kiwi II Construction. They are the sponsors of my Stories Behind the Door podcast, helping us to have these important one-on-one conversations with key people in the self-storage industry. S3 Partners, we've been working alongside them, our principal, Barry Sherman, relying on Kiwi II for steel for over 30 years. So really excited for the founders of Kiwi II and what this means for them and their families. I was lucky enough to catch up with Wayne Woolsey out in Snowmass, Colorado.
Yeah, it feels really good. It feels good for us, but it gives us, good sustainability for the team. And that's been an important process for us as, we wanted to make sure that the team was, on the top and in the forefront of the whole negotiation. And that's exactly what's happened.
Wayne says he wouldn't even started working on the negotiations with Janus if they hadn't understood foundationally that nothing at Kiwi was going to change and that they were going to be able to run the company the way they have for the last 30 plus years.
It's business as usual. We're a business unit. We're independent. And I'm, and Brian, we're still, running this thing like we did before. And they're there to support us, grow us, and the support behind them with, pricing. It's going to be a big thing for the end user is going to benefit from this tremendously.
How does the end user benefit? Well, Woolsey says that by combining the purchasing power of Kiwi with that of Janus, they're going to get even more credits from those vendors selling them steel coil. They're then going to be able to pass that credit along to their customers in the form of better pricing. I caught up with Jeff Higashi of Janus. Jeff has had a long relationship with Wayne Woolsey as well and the whole team at Kiwi Construction. Jeff said, hey, we have worked with them seamlessly for many, many years and have so much respect. We consider Kiwi to be the premier steel provider in the self-storage industry. And there's been a relationship built on trust, but even more importantly, the deliverables that Kiwi has been able to do in the industry. So Jeff says the whole team at Janus couldn't be happier with the acquisition. There has been some blowback to this consolidation, this acquisition by Janus of Kiwi II. People that say this vendor consolidation in storage is going to make it harder on developers to be able to get great pricing. Wayne Woolsey says, hey, the exact opposite is true. People are afraid of consolidation, but the reality is that there are 8 or 9 really good steel providers in the industry, and enough of those steel providers are independent that things will still be competitive on the pricing front. The most important thing for any of you folks who've worked with Kiwi II in the past, Wayne and his old team are going to keep operating that company exactly as they have for the last 3 decades. Of course, the other big news in storage, it's been a pretty exciting first 2 weeks of 2026. We touched briefly last week on the appointment of Noah Springer as president at Extra Space. I was able to spend a few minutes with him in New York City last week at the investment forum. This week out in Snowmass, Colorado, of course, the ski workshop is much more of a networking event. And Springer was gracious enough to sit down with me and have a conversation about what it looks like that he's going to be the new president at Extra Space. Was happy to get Noah to share with me his thoughts on the new role.
It's a cool thing. I think it's also a humbling thing, right? The team is very good. And to have been at Extra Space for 20 years, there's a lot of capable, great people in the industry and at our company that could do this. And to be selected to do this is it's a humbling, really neat thing for me to be able to step into.
Noah says so many of his colleagues that he's worked alongside for the last 2 decades have taken the time to reach out to him, come up to him in person, and give their congratulations. And more importantly, their excitement for him assuming this new role. Noah says that means the world to him because it shows him that these people have respect for how he's interacted with them, but also the accomplishments he's had at Extra Space, that they're excited to see him take on this new mantle. Springer says, don't expect a lot to change. He doesn't see his promotion to president as a meaning of time to change things at Extra Space. As he said, feels very confident in the people and the direction they're going. Instead, he sees his role really as one of facilitating those folks at Extra Space to be able to continue the great work that they've done over the last 2 decades. Although he does see one important new requirement.
White hair for everybody. I think look, this is a big ship, and we've steered the ship in the right direction for the whole time I've been there, 20 plus years. The values are the same that they've always been and will always be. The culture is an important thing, and we need to keep that going. So it isn't so much of a change, but it's keep the ship going in the right direction.
No truth to the rumor that I'm now in the running for a job at Extra Space. All jokes aside, I did ask Noah about some of the negative perception that's been going on in the industry for the last couple of years relative to the discount pricing strategy and the associated ECRI policies that have drawn some blowback legislatively, and that Extra Space has sort of been credited for. I guess credit may be the wrong word. Some of the fault laid at the feet of Extra Space. I asked him about that, and he says, hey, Thad, look, our role as the people operating Extra Space is to provide for our shareholders. And our single biggest metric that we're worried about is same store NOI growth. Springer said their ECRI and discount strategy policies are doing what it is they want them to do, which is to push in-store NOI growth. Fascinating conversation. We talked for almost an hour out in Colorado. And one of the things that I found very insightful that Springer shared with me was, look, nobody talks about the challenges that saturation is causing in the industry, right? Of course, Extra Space is by far the largest third-party manager on 2,000 plus stores that they're managing as the third party. He says, look, if we get a store and it's in an environment, in a market where there's saturation, a lot of times we don't have a choice but to cut rates in order to drive occupancy in those stores in markets where there's, of course, we've seen in the last 10 years, we reported extensively on the show, nearly double the net rentable square feet. We've had almost 100% of the existing square footage in 2015 built in the last 10 years. So Springer says, look, we're going to do what we think is best for each individual store. But in the current environment and the amount of development that's gone on in the last 10 years, it's hard for them to not cut rates in those markets where they feel it's necessitated. Of course, he says we have the best data and technology to make those decisions. He shared one thing I thought was incredibly funny. He shared a quote with me. He said, the manager's doing a fantastic job, but the asset's just in a market where it never should have been built, said no developer ever. So funny anecdote from Noah Springer. Just want to say again, very grateful in the first week and a half that Noah Springer was president of Extra Space. He took over an hour to talk to me about some of the strategy and what's going on at that company. Overwhelmingly, his message was things are not going to change. We feel like what we've been doing is working for our shareholders and for the individual owners of the locations that we operate, and that he is incredibly proud of the team and trusts the team to continue to do great work at Extra Space. I will say on top of that, all the people that I know in the industry have tremendous respect for Noah Springer. I should say most of the people I know, the vast majority, tremendous respect for Noah Springer and what he's done in the industry over the last 20 years. People that have worked with him, alongside him, or have had the opportunity to get to know him in the industry. Interesting side note, Noah was kind enough to introduce me to Extra Space founder Ken Woolley while I was out there, and we are working hard to get Ken Woolley onto the Stories Behind the Door podcast. I will keep everyone up to date on that as well. So good. Congratulations to Noah Springer, and looking forward to seeing what happens with his new role as president at Extra Space. Good news in the beginning of 2026 for REIT stocks. It's been a great start to the year for the four largest publicly traded companies. I'd like to say that this has everything to do with Noah Springer, as Extra Space's stock price has risen markedly in the first couple of weeks of this year, up over 12%. But that's sort of been across the board. You can see National Storage Affiliates up 17% in the last month, almost all of that happening in just the last week. Same thing with Cube, Public, and Extra. Really, the first week and a half, 2 weeks of the new year has been great for their stock prices. What's driving that? Well, this is one of the reasons I wanted to show this graphic. As I was talking to operators in the last couple of weeks at the two big events that I was at, one of the things I kept hearing is that December had unusual move-ins. Typically, December is a time of the year where we don't see a lot of transactions in the storage industry as far as new leases. This year, that operators were very surprised and happily surprised at leases being higher than normal. That seems to be reflected in the stock price as we start 2026. Of course, we'll get more information as we have earnings calls, which are expected to be in mid to late February. We will certainly keep you up to date on that in the self-storage report as those are scheduled. Well, the battle between the White House and the Federal Reserve is ratcheting up a few notches over the course of the last week. Now we see what sure looks like some political game playing going on between President Trump and Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve. Of course, Trump has been very vocal since he took office at the beginning of 2025 and wanting the Federal Reserve to sharply reduce interest rates. And even in the wake of the Federal Reserve choosing to cut 25 bips at each of their last three meetings, September, October, and early December, dropping almost a full point, 3/4 of a point off the Federal Reserve overnight rate in that time. Trump is still pushing to get more rate cuts by the Fed. Why is this important in self-storage? Well, I alluded to the analyst at Moody's, Armanghardi Jabril's keynote speech at the investment forum last week. I actually asked her a question. Is it more likely that the 10-year treasury goes up if the Federal Reserve continues to cut rates? This is a graph of the Federal Reserve over the last 6 months. And you can see on September 11th, it dipped to its lowest point at 3.99%. You were able to buy bonds. They didn't have to go above 4% in return to get investment. Well, the first Fed meeting and the first rate cut from the Fed was around September 16th. So shortly after the low point. And what we've seen is the Fed has dropped 75 bips from their overnight rate. The Fed has actually done the opposite. It's gone up almost 0.2% in that time. Well, why is this important? Well, mortgage rates are based off the Fed. Of course, storage could use nothing more than an increase in movement in the housing market. But the reality is this interaction between Trump and Fed Chairman Powell is doing nothing to encourage excitement in the investment community. Instead, it's creating some tension. And the last thing that the 10-year treasury needs is investor sentiment to be shaky. We're seeing that, of course, Democrats have come out and decried the investigation that Trump has had the DOJ launch into Chairman Powell's $2.5 billion renovation of the downtown Washington, D.C. Federal Reserve building. The DOJ is investigating Powell's representation of that project in front of Congress, largely viewed as a strong arm tactic by the White House to try and encourage the Fed to cut rates. Why am I concerned? Well, if the 10-year treasury, if investor sentiment goes down, people think that it's more shaky to buy government bonds, and interest rates on the 10-year treasury go up, that's only going to force the mortgages on single family homes to go up. And that is not good news in any way, shape, or form for the self-storage industry. I want to transition to some big news coming from our data partner, Tract IQ. Next Tuesday, January 20th, they are set to debut an upgrade to their platform for users of Tract IQ. Noah Springer's made it his mission to improve access to data in the self-storage industry for decision makers to be able to make better decisions in the industry. I've seen a little bit behind the curtain of what's coming. We are going to have Noah Springer on the show next Thursday, January 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be back to our normal Thursday time. I apologize this week. I was out in Colorado. Yesterday was a travel day to get back to the East Coast, but next week we'll back to our normally scheduled time on Thursday. And we're going to have Noah live on the show, showing everyone exactly what it is that Tract IQ users are now going to have access to. I am not going to tell you more than I've already said because I'm not allowed to on pain of serious repercussions. So I'm going to keep that a secret, but I will say this. I've seen it, and it is going to create a seismic shift in the self-storage industry. The data that's going to be available to Tract IQ users is like nothing that anyone else has, unless you're Public Storage or Extra Space and you have so many stores that you own yourself that you have all that data in-house. So really excited to have Noah Springer on next Thursday. And quite frankly, this goes into some of my thoughts from the investment forum in New York City last week and this week out in the ski workshop. And what I'm hearing as I'm talking to various players in the industry, Noah Springer included, who talked about this. Noah said, hey, not Noah Starr, Noah Springer, president of Extra Space, says one of the challenges that they see right now is the way that self-storage deals are structured, whether it's acquisitions or it's ground up development. There is so much big money from the REITs coming into self-storage that what they're doing is they're going to people that are already existing in the market, people that are investing in the market, and they're bringing this capital and they're structuring a deal so that if you're a developer, you can get a development fee on the front end, maybe even a project management fee, maybe an assignment fee on finding a piece of land, and you can build those into your deals where there might be $500,000 or more dollars for the developer in the deal. Yes, they're going to get equity in the deal, and that equity could turn out to be worth way more money than the fees that they get. But at the end of the day, even if that equity doesn't turn out to have any value long term, those developers are still getting money on the front end to do those projects. So a lot of sentiment I'm hearing. Noah Springer certainly wasn't the only person that I talked to who has this concern of what's going on in the market. So we're really excited for Tract IQ, and they're debuting their new product launch and how this is going to help, whether it's acquisitions or ground up development, folks make better decisions about projects that they're doing in the self-storage space. So shout out to Noah Starr for the product improvement that he's doing at Tract IQ. We're so excited that they're our data partner. Looking forward to having him live on the show next week. Well, I promised you this week that it was going to be an incredible How Faith Fuels Your Business. Few months back, I was on LinkedIn, which I know is a shock to all of you that I never go on LinkedIn. I don't spend any time there. I saw a post that just caught my attention. The post went extremely viral from a new startup company called Terrakotta. Terrakotta's product is an AI-based dialer. I got my start and the way I actually entered the self-storage space is I was working at a residential wholesaling company, just pounding a phone from a CRM every day. So I was intrigued by this AI dialer and what it might be capable of doing. Even though I don't dial the phone a whole lot anymore in that way, I signed myself up for a demo and I got to meet Kusiima Powell, one of the co-founders of Terrakotta. Was blown away by his product. Many of you that are watching the show, whether you're a broker or somebody that I know is strong in the acquisitions market, somebody that I know is on the phone a lot, I personally introduced you to Kusiima Boswell. I said Powell, I don't know why. Kusiima Boswell of Terrakotta. I've personally introduced you via text to him and urged you to get a demo of this because if you are dialing the phone on a regular basis, it's game-changing technology. As I've gotten to know Kusiima over the last few months, our relationship has transcended just business, and I've gotten to know him on a human level, and I could not help but bring him on to this incredible segment that we have on the show as he shares his story of how he has integrated his faith in God, his belief that Jesus Christ is his savior, into his work at Terrakotta.
Thanks first off so much for having me, and inviting me to join you today. That I've really enjoyed getting to know you. And so when you kind of asked me about this and I was telling you about my faith, my belief in Jesus, my belief in God, and the amazing gift that I feel like he's given me through salvation, I was really excited to jump on with you. I think the thing that constantly pops up in my mind when I think about how faith feels my business and the work that I try to do, I think it's Matthew 6. I think it's from the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is saying basically, "He first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and then all these things will be added unto you." So I think, and he's talking about provision in that scripture. He's basically telling people that are listening to him, like, hey, don't worry about like money. And it's kind of a weird way to frame how I feel like faith fuels my business. He's saying, like, don't worry about money. Like, look up to God and serve him. Love the Lord, that God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as thyself is basically what he says. Doing those things and finding ways to do that within business, whether that's serving others, always trying to do the right thing, thinking about different situations and applying scripture from that. I think seeking first God's kingdom and what he wants and how he wants us to treat each other and love each other and take care of one another is where I try to start with it. And all these things will be added unto you is what he says. And that's directly from Jesus. So I think that Sermon on the Mount, like Matthew 5, 6, 7, really speaks to me. I think like you really have to like, I mean, I listen to it constantly. Like I listen to that sermon all the time. What I have, in terms of smarts, energy, ability, connections, it's really not much on my own. Like you take a step back and you look at like who my mother is and the incredible teachers that I had to get here to, the fact I got to go to Lakeside where we had an incredible computer science program. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed with everything when it feels like it's all on you. I noticed throughout the Bible a lot of times like God will just like be like, fear not, for I'm with you. And it's like a greeting. I'm noticing the more I kind of read and study it. And to be honest with you, Dad, like I was, I grew up going to church. My mom took us on Wednesdays and Sundays. I went to college, kind of drifted away from it, did my own thing. That was a terrible idea. Like doesn't work. I found like you need to submit, you need to submit to somebody. You need to have some sort of authority. It doesn't matter if you're 1 or 100. Like that it needs to be in order. And that's the way that like I believe that God designed us to do things. Back to my first point, like I don't really like, I'm pretty weak on my own. And it also says in the Bible, like, when I'm weak, he's strong. And so coming from that like place of like, hey, like I'm beat down, I'm exhausted right now, I can't remember things. I would just say like having faith that I don't have to fight every battle by myself. Why should I fear? Like you're at the end of my life. You're there waiting for me. Your goodness and your loving goodness are following me. And that's the end of Psalm 20. I think it's the end of Psalm 23. But like in the ESV, it's like, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the rest of the days of my life. I'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I'm with him all the time when it's stressful or when I'm nervous. And I just get this sense of comfort. It's not me. Like it's like the Holy Spirit or something. And I think that's the part that makes it really easy is like you get energy from that and you get peace from that.
I have chills watching this and I'm very excited. The full version of that talk with Kusiima Boswell from Terrakotta will go live on the YouTube page on Monday. Of course, I'll post that to LinkedIn as well so you can see the full conversation of how faith fuels your business. I was able to run into Cam Pactonat, who I give so much credit to for inspiring me to start this segment of the show while I was out in Colorado. Always going to give kudos to Cam. We've got some great guests coming up on this segment. Next week, it's going to be Terry Campbell. I'm going to be talking to James Reed out of St. Louis, a self-storage developer, runs BCI Contractors as well. Largely a person who I give credit for inspiring my resurgent faith. I met him in Sarasota last year, and he gave a talk at a mastermind event that really, really got me excited to go pursue my faith again. So shout out, looking forward to James Reed being on the show. Many more coming up. Logan Freeman, a realtor out of Kansas City that I'm excited to talk to on this segment as well. So keep watching the show. You're going to get great, great talks from folks talking about the practical way that you can implement God into your business life. Kusiima Boswell, co-founder of Terrakotta. Guys, if you're dialing the phone on a regular basis, reach out to me. I'll connect you to him. He's very easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Do yourself a favor and take a demo of the Terrakotta software. It is game changing. I don't usually like to talk too much about somebody's product when we're doing this segment about faith, but in this case with Kusiima, a young guy doing a startup company, definitely want to support him. He's one of the good ones out there doing God's work in the community. So listen, I want to thank everyone for watching the show. I'm going to sign off today a little differently. You guys may have noticed over the last few weeks, Chris Berg has not been with me on the show. Chris and I started this show back in June of 2024, and I love Chris to death. Somebody I will forever consider a friend, somebody who we have a strong faith connection with as well. Over the last few weeks, Chris and I have been talking a little bit about our individual plans and where we want to go. And we've decided to part company on the show. It's very amicable for sure. Both wish each other nothing but the best. And I'll continue to pray for Chris and his success in the self-storage industry. That being said, this will be my last time being on a show called The Self-Storage Report. I will be with you next week, as I said, with Noah Starr, talking about his work at Tract IQ and the new product that they're going to debut. But that show will be called Storage Unlocked. I will be the host of that, as I've been for the last few weeks here, but very much looking forward to being with you all. Ask you guys, please, if you can continue to support. I'm grateful for everyone that's reached out. Of course, I was in New York City last week and Colorado this week. So many of you have come up to me and just shared that you think I'm putting great content out, and that's deeply appreciated. I'm humbled to be able to do this in the industry. So looking forward to next week as we debut Storage Unlocked. That's it for this week's episode. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell, S3 Partners, 30 plus years, 300 plus ground up developments. If you are getting into storage, small bay flex, boat and RV, or if you've been in it for a while and just have a project that you can't wrap your head around, we can help you all the way from entitlements through picking out GCs, getting the thing built, all the way to handing off the keys to whoever is going to operate the facility. We are not operators, so don't expect us to help you on that side of it. But we know the great operators. If you're looking for somebody else, we can connect you there as well. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for our help. That's it for this week's show. We'll see you next week, Thursday, 1 o'clock.